Hey guys, it's Leonard. Now, first and foremost, I want to say a big thank you to all of you who have supported season 1 of The Real Millionaires of E-Commerce. Now, listen to this. We've been seeing the comments and got an awful lot of requests for us to sit down with Jordan Platten. So what have we done? We've gone and created an extended episode of The Real Millionaires of E-Commerce featuring Jordan Platten. So if you're watching this video right now, make sure you're subscribed, you like this video, and also let us know in the comments below who you want to see in future seasons of The Real Millionaires by MYCOMEUP.
Today, I'm on my way to meet Jordan Platten, a British-born entrepreneur who went from growing up in a small village in Norfolk to generating his first £1 million in revenue by 25 years old with his educational business called Affluent. After dropping out of school, Jordan found himself lost and stuck between 3 jobs until he found an opportunity to set up a marketing agency to help small businesses with the management of their social media accounts. Within 90 days of starting, Jordan managed to scale his agency to over 6 figures and slowly built an online YouTube audience with an appetite to learn his business secrets. Today, Jordan has built over 200,000 YouTube subscribers and has amassed millions of views online. I'm here to find out about the man behind the brand and get a deeper understanding of who Jordan Platten is.
Jordan, first and foremost, thank you so much for taking the time today. I know you've got a lot going on. I'm here in Norfolk, or Norwich.
Yeah.
2 hours from London, where we've come down from. First off, conversation. This is not like there's no right or wrong answer. Just want to really get to the root. I mean, this is an episode that's been in demand. We've been getting a lot of requests. So I wanted to kind of give people a bit more of an understanding of who Jordan is. So welcome.
Cool. Thanks, man.
To the episode. So first off, let's kind of just take it back, right? Because you grew up in Norfolk, family of 6, if I'm right?
Yeah.
Tell me a bit about how growing up in Norfolk at the early stages of your life molded and shaped your journey.
Cool. So I love Norfolk. It's a lovely place, but I grew up in a very small village, no shops. Spent a lot of time outside. And as a child, that's amazing. You go out a lot, you play with your friends, and you meet loads of people. And if you want to go around your friend's house, you just bike for hours. And that's really fond memories of my childhood. So that was amazing. But it's quite limiting as a place because there's not, I suppose, financial success or even business in general isn't something that's talked about an awful lot or necessarily encouraged an awful lot because I don't think there's much of it going on. So it was interesting on that side of the journey. But as a child, it was great. I mean, it's so fun. We've got such nice countryside around and I love that.
And you grew up in a family of 6. Were you where were you in that 6?
So I was slap bang in the middle of two boys, really. And I have a younger sister, but she's 6 years younger. But I was the middle child of 2 brothers, which was cool. It was fun. We had our bickers and we all learned from each other, and it was a great experience being in a big family. We don't have a big extended family. It's just our immediate. So we all were very close growing up. So yeah, it was nice.
So you've got this environment where you're in somewhat of a village. Mm-hmm. Of course, it's quite comforting. Mm-hmm. Where do you feel like you started to get the spark? I mean, the spark of wanting a little bit more. And I mean, before you started the business, where do you feel like you kind of felt that shift internally?
I never had pocket money growing up. And that's something that when I was young, I resented my parents for. And one of my friends had a paper round in another village and they were delivering newspapers on their bike every morning. And I really want that job. So I spoke to that friend and he managed to get me the job in my village, which was awesome at 13 years old. So I was waking up really early in the morning, 5 a.m. before school, going around on the bike for an hour and a half for £15 a week. But it was the first time I had my own money. And that for me was, and none of my friends did, because again, jobs weren't really a thing. You were lucky to get a job in a pub. And there's like 5 pubs in the local area. So like we're all fighting over the same stuff. So the paper round for me was like that first taste of independence and that first taste of like, okay, if I'm not going to get pocket money, at least I got this money, and I was having more than what my friends were getting when they're £5 a week or whatever it was. So I suppose that was like the first taste of, let me have some kind of like financial independence, and this is quite nice.
And at this stage, did you feel different, or did you know that you were different at this point, 13, when you kind of...
Not really. I don't think at 13 like I was mindful of that situation. I don't think I thought about the fact that, I don't even think I was comparing myself to other people in that sense. But I just knew that I enjoyed having and working for my own stuff. I think because I didn't have that from my parents. I had everything, I don't want to get this wrong, I had everything that I needed, but not everything that I wanted. And there's something that I was very grateful that was instilled in me. So I don't necessarily think I was different, but I definitely felt different to everyone else in the sense that I had to work for the stuff that I wanted, you know? Whereas it kind of felt like most other people around me were kind of being gifted or aided through the process.
And at this point in your early teens, how do you feel like you were interpreting your educational experience? How do you feel like and I'm talking about personally and theoretically through the educational system, how do you think you were interpreting it?
I was the kid in school where you go to parents' evening and they all say to your parents like, Jordan could do so well if he just applied himself, if he just listened more. I wasn't a misbehaved kid. I had my times, I had my moments. I played up, and I never really got on well with authority in school. I didn't really like being told this is the way it has to be. I gravitated to arty subjects and creativity. I actually used to, you remember Yu-Gi-Oh, the cards? I used to draw them when I used to come home from school, and I'd sell them for £1 in school to people people around. And I found myself gravitating to drama, to arts, to technology, because it would allow me to be expressive. And although I'm certainly not, I wasn't an academic student, I didn't really enjoy that side of school, because I think I didn't want to learn about something that I didn't fundamentally find interesting, you know? Like, it's quite hard as a 14, 15-year-old kid to find algebra fascinating. I mean, not for all kids, but for me, yeah.
And eventually, how did that play out with your relationship with school? Did you end up continuing to higher education? And
I did, but it was very much pushed by my parents. My parents, like, okay, you go to college and you go to uni, like, in the area at least, or at least from my upbringing, it was, you go to school, you get your good grades, you go to college, then you go to uni, and then you get a good job. Like, that's just the done thing. And so, but I knew I wanted to, at the time I very much was motivated by money. I thought that was just like the secret to happiness. That's very different now. But back then, that's what I thought. And so I remember having a conversation with my dad, and I was like, Dad, I really want to I'm into my arts, I'm into creativity, like I really want to do something where I earn a lot of money. And he was like, Jordan, you should study architecture, which is like the design of houses and buildings and stuff. And I found that fascinating. I thought that was awesome. So I went to college, I did maths, I did graphic design and so on, all the subjects I needed to do. And then I went to uni and studied architecture, which was quite short-lived, to be honest. I got kicked out of uni after 2 years for starting something on the side. But I felt pressure to carry on education, but I definitely had resistance myself from doing that.
So essentially, you've kind of taken this advice from your father, applied it, got stuck in, ignored whatever you're feeling inside, and it still leads you down the road of being kicked out.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit about how you felt at that point where you was like, okay, I've gone this road, now this road is not worked out. Where were you mentally at that point?
So when I was at the point when I was actually, I realized like in my first year of uni that I actually was going to have to train for like 7 years to get like a 30k a year salary. And that for me it was just crazy. I'm not training for 7 years to come out of this and make 30k a year. So I lost love of the subject. So I started exploring other avenues. And so I started a clothing brand that didn't really work out so well. I had no experience. And then I started going out quite a lot. I was partying. I was kind of escaping uni and just enjoying that side of things. So I actually started working for someone doing PR on the streets for nightclubs. And I built a relationship with the owners of those clubs. And then I actually managed to pull the rug from the person I was working for. And I managed to get the contract to start this events business in nightclubs. And I was doing that 4 nights a week. And that's why I stopped attending my lectures so much. And it was at that point I got kicked out. But at that time, I got myself in a lot of debt. Because like, I don't know, I think it's like this in most places, but like the nightclub industry, certainly around here, was like, and I think nightclubs in general are just very superficial places, especially like the bottle clubs. I'm talking about that kind of venue. So you have this false pretense and this false confidence because you're the one managing the guest list. You're the one who's allowing people to come and you're the one who's making all the friends and people are sucking up to you left, right and center. But I had this ego and I just thought I was the man, Mr. Norwich, something stupid like that. This inflated sense. And when I got kicked out of uni, that business started failing and I was so depressed because I put myself in so much debt. Because it was like, now I'm the guy and I'm doing this and you were speaking to me to come into the club. And then I had this lifestyle that I had to uphold. And it was like, because when I got kicked out of uni, I was like, I didn't care about kicking me out of uni. I was shitting myself. Like, I was like, what the hell am I going to do? But to everyone else, I'm like, I don't care. Look, I've got this business. And then it failed. And I was just, that was a low point for me, for sure.
And at that point, if I remember correctly, you decided to then just start taking up multiple jobs, right? Is that the period?
Yeah,
How did you get transition? Because obviously that's a big thing, right? You've kind of kicked out of university, go into this business for the first time, as many entrepreneurs do.
Yeah.
And it becomes part of your lifestyle and your ego, and you lose that, you know, and you lose it, I'm sure, before everyone realizes it.
Yeah.
So how did you, at that point then, move forward, and what were your next steps moving forward?
I just knew that I had to get myself out of debt. Like, and I hadn't told anyone in that position, like, the situation. Like, none of my friends, not my family, and I'm really close to my family, but I didn't tell them because it was just pure pride and pure ego that I couldn't tell them. So for me, it was like, okay, how can I earn as much money as I can to get myself, it's like 6K or something like that. But like when you're in uni, you don't have money. So like that's a lot of money. That was a huge amount of money back then. And I was looking into industries, and for me, because I was already being quite social and speaking to a lot of people, I thought sales made a lot of sense because I'd heard about good commission rates and I'd seen a couple of people in sales. And I was like, do you know what, let me give this a crack. So I was working in a restaurant at the time, which again, just, it was so bad, man. Like I remember I would have to serve the people who would used to come into the club and like go on the guest list, and like I'm standing in front of you singing happy birthday to you. And I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? Like it wasn't fun. And so I left that and I jumped into this sales job. But it was like a boiler room environment, like full on boiler room. You're in there and you're making 100 cold calls a day. But I think like throughout school, at least, and throughout my entire like pre-21 years old, I was massively introverted, like really introverted. But sales for me, so naturally it was just this completely alien situation for me to be in. And I remember I just used to like walk to the edge of the office and I'd be like shaking with like my script in hand thinking, how am I going to do this? But I was like, the debt. And I remembered what I learned in drama from school. I used to act on the weekends in the local theatre. I used to want to be an actor when I was a kid. And then I didn't like how long that would take, and I might get scouted, I might not. And I remember in drama though, I remember that it's always about learn your script. It's like that's the first thing you want to do, because then you can add your tonality, you can add your own spin on everything. And I did that in sales, and within the first 3 months of being there, I was within the top 3 performers in the company. But it was a very, very hard battle getting from the point of debt and being introverted to borderline extroverted. I still think it's like a wall, somewhat, like a barrier. But yeah, that was a ride. But definitely the most self-development I've ever had to go through in my life, because I was pushed in that corner, you know.
And then at some point you realise that you want more.
Yeah.
And you meet a friend that's setting up an online business, right?
For sure.
So tell me about that transition and you
Yeah.
transitioning essentially from where you're number 3 in the company
to rolling the dice again.
For sure. It's I had a friend who, one of the jobs when I was battling multiple jobs, I was working in the Apple store, just like in the front of the store, like selling iPhones or whatever. And I met a guy there, and I left there to jump into this sales job. And he followed me. I was like, cool, like I'm gonna come as well. So he came along with me, and we had like 3 years where we followed each other through different jobs, kind of progressing through sales. Because I think, for me at least, I knew that once I got to the top of my game in one company, I was very unfilled, and I was like, okay, like I've now hit my peak. I don't know where I'm going to go from here. I want something more. And so I just looked for a better job, more salary, more commission. And I was jumping through this, and it was 3 years, just the end of 3 years being in these sales jobs, 3 different companies. 1 year, I'd never been in a job for more than a year. I just jump. I had 21 jobs before the age of 21 years old. I got sacked from 3 of them. I was a bit of an employee's nightmare. I was just obsessed with progressing through to the next thing. And now looking back on it, I was chasing something that didn't really exist. But I was in this job. I remember sitting in this job in an office and looking around to everyone around me. And I just replaced someone actually who was 54 years old when I replaced the role. And so the average age in the office, average age was 50s, I would say, in this office. Quite an old company. And I was doing door-to-door all over the place. And I remember looking around and everyone was talking about what they're going to do at the weekend. And there was just like this tone of underlying unsatisfaction. And people were talking about their holiday and how many holidays they have left and how many days they have and what they're doing this weekend and so on. And I was just like, I do not want to be in that position when I'm your age. Like, it's okay and it's amazing, and I would never impose that opinion on somebody else, because I think those people could fundamentally be way more happy than I was in that position. But for me, something clicked, and I was like, I do not want to be in this position, and I don't want to have that from my life. And so that friend who I was working with actually started a YouTube channel and started a business in Amazon FBA. And he started doing pretty well, like more money than I'd ever seen. And I was like, wow, like there's something in this. I doubted it at the start, but I was like, wow, there might be something in this. And so I started immersing myself in that online business space, in that minefield, Amazon FBA, SMMA as it was called, the Ty Lopez videos, the whole lot, back in the prime of all of that. And I stumbled across social media marketing, and it resonated with me as a sales-based industry. And it made the most sense. I was just going to talk to people and solve problems, which is what I was doing on a daily basis in sales anyway. So yeah, that's how I got started in that.
So that transition, of course, and something that's pretty clear is that you tend to be okay walking away from security.
Yes.
And you kind of acknowledge these moments where you hit the top of an industry as almost like a point where you need to create change to get more.
Yes.
So now you're walking away from 3 of these companies which you've experienced back to back, and you've now learned about setting up your own SSMA agency. Tell me about how you walk into that new chapter of your life, and how. Yeah. Because that's a gamble, to be honest, right? And tell me if I'm wrong, but when you first jumped in, were you backing yourself financially, leading up to getting that off the ground, or were you using money from the previous job to invest in it? How are you making that transition?
Yeah,
I mean, that's going from employment to ownership, right? That's
for sure.
Which is pivotal.
For sure.
In your transition.
I never really had a good money mindset when I was in jobs, so I would very much live paycheck to paycheck. So I didn't really have an awful lot of money to invest, which is one of the reasons I chose to go into starting an agency, because really the only money I needed was to invest in my education and really my time. But I remember really at that time, like the reason why I wanted to start was because I'd earned enough money at 23 years old when I started, earning on a monthly basis, that more than all of my friends and more than like most people I knew at my age and in the job. I think it was like 55K a year I was averaging, which was awesome. But I had no time, no one else could enjoy it. Like I was going on holidays once a year, it was over before it even started. And I was just like, I need to start this business so I can have some freedom. I need to start a business that in theory I can outsource and I can just enjoy my time and I can have that. So when I started out, it was like, okay, fine, right, I need to make some sacrifices. So I read a book called The Miracle Morning by Elrod. I talk about that book all the time. I'm not an affiliate to it, but it literally changed my life. It's a book which basically teaches you about morning routines and about waking up early and about maximizing that time and affirmations and scribing and exercise in the morning. And I started waking up at 5 a.m. and I started using that time all morning to educate myself on social media marketing, on starting an agency. Because the sales side I felt confident about. I actually approached it wrong when I first started, but it was the marketing side of things that I had no experience with. I didn't know how to run Facebook ads. I didn't know how to post on Instagram for clients and write captions and do copywriting and all of that. So every single morning I started educating myself, and then in the evenings I would cold call businesses, and even on my lunches I would do lead generation whilst I was in the job. And fortunately, I'd already had that discipline instilled from me from the sales jobs, that I knew that all I needed to do was set some rigid targets and stick to those. And then eventually, through law of averages, it would work and I would be successful. Fortunately, within 2 weeks I signed my first 2 clients. And in my mind, I said, just replace your outgoings, the stuff that you need to live your life. Don't replace the salary, replace the outgoings, and then quit your job. And so 2 weeks in, 2 clients later, I quit my job, handed my resignation, and went full time with it.
And now you have an agency.
Yeah.
And you're in the game. You've got your business.
Yeah.
This is the first agency that takes you from, you said 55,000 employed to how much did you say you made? Because I've seen online you've done 90 days of getting this agency into 6 figures.
Yeah, within the first 3 months we hit 10K in the agency, which was awesome. Like that was like the goal I had. Like I was like, oh, I'm gonna hit 10K. Because at this time when I started the company, the freedom was like something I was like, that was like my main thing. But like I still thought money would make me like fully satisfied. So it was like, I think a lot of people said, like, you ask 10 people who haven't started a business yet, how much money do you want, and they're like 10K a month. Because I think we just get, that's just crammed down our throat. They're like 10K. And I got to that point within 3 months because I just had been conditioned to stick to targets. So I was reaching out to 20 companies a day, and I was just going through that process over 3 months. And I hit that, like it wasn't satisfying at all. And it became more about, okay, why am I actually doing this? Like, what is the reason why I want to start this company? What am I chasing right now? Because I had time and I had freedom and I had more money than I'd ever had seen before on a monthly basis. And it started being about the game. It started being about just improving myself every day and seeing how far I could take it, and also making a big impact on people. And I realized that subconsciously I'd always desired to help other people start their own businesses and be successful, because I remember being like 17, 18, 19 years old and being the guy that would be at a party and I'd be like outside. I didn't smoke, right? But I would smoke cigarettes socially so I could just stand outside with people and have private conversations away from the party. And I would be preaching about, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna have this business, I'm gonna be successful, I'm gonna do this, and I'm talking about mindset and all these things. And people just looking at me like, man, you're an idiot, like you're just dreaming right now. And I knew what that felt like, and I felt so constricted by that my whole life that when I actually had started my YouTube channel and I had the ability to start actually impacting other people, I became the person that I wanted when I was that age to listen to me and say, I get you, I understand you, and I can help you, and I can guide you through this process. And it became about that. And I became obsessed with helping other people start their own companies and helping other people just improve their mindset, or just helping other people have somebody else who just understands their way of thinking. And that became the obsession. And the growth and the money and everything else was secondary, and it just followed.
So you go from 55K, I'm just breaking this down, 55K employment. Within the first 3 months, you're hitting 10K a month.
Yeah.
Then by the time you get to 25, you hit your first million.
Yeah.
And is that combining both businesses, or is that from the agency?
No, that actually was just the education business that I did that from. But the agency itself, like, it's strange because like the start of the agency was the money maker, and then when I first started the education business, because that industry was so rife at the time, and the YouTube channel just took off. Like that just started making, like I remember the first day I launched a product, I made $8,000 in a day. And I was like, this is just the craziest thing I've ever experienced. And I had like 10K YouTube followers or something like that. And so that business really started, and I had the agency running at the same time, and I was running both. But now actually it's kind of flipped on its head, and the agency, because we've now got a team and it's automated, and I've got a business partner, that has just kind of taken off, and it's actually the tables have turned with as far as revenue is concerned. But yeah, I mean the agency probably by the time of 25 had done maybe like 700K or something like that. So
you hit your first million 25.
Yeah.
How do you feel?
I was very happy within myself, because it was like, okay, cool, like this is like something you've always, like, I never thought I'd be able to do it before 25. I always said to myself before 30, like, if I do it before 30, I'll be really happy. But I was so desensitized to money at that point, because I think we all hear like $1 million, it's like, wow, that's amazing. But like, when you're making 100K a month, like, or 50K a month, like, there comes a level when you don't need more money necessarily. Like, so you're so desensitized to money anyway. And I think that I was not very frugal at the start. Like, I was buying nice cars, I was buying nice things, I was going out all the time, I was spending all my money on holidays. So like, I was so desensitized to money by the time I made that million that it was just a number. And it was like, okay, cool, what's next? You know, it wasn't satisfying. But it was cool. It was nice. And it was nice to say that to my parents and then be like, wow, that's awesome. And that was cool.
If you think like, let's not use the million as just a threshold, but let's say $1 million and beyond, just looking at your pattern of achieving mountaintops and kind of feeling like you need to reset, what impact do you feel like after that point, having hit that target, that had on your mental health and just like your view of what you saw you wanted to do next?
So I remember actually just before, I think it was like 24 years old. It was like the first full year into business. I remember like my birthday at that point, it being like it was like a really pivotal point for me, because I remember like that day, and I was like wealthier than I'd ever been, but I had no plans, and like no one had made any effort, and like my friends were all doing shit, and like I didn't like arrange anything, and I kind of just like, and on the day I was like really uncontent with that. And I was like, wow, like I've been chasing money all this time, and like now I don't have all of the other areas of my life in check. And I think up until that point, I was so consumed all the time with, let me do things all the time, let me buy things all the time, let me spend time with people all the time, let me go on holidays all the time, that I never really worked on myself, that I never really spent time to become comfortable with myself and do a bit of soul searching. And it was since then that I really started, and I remember conversations with my mum even growing up saying to me like, oh, you really don't like just being alone, do you? Like, you really want to be around people all the time. And I think it's just, maybe it's insecurity, maybe it was just like a lack of trying to work on myself, but I don't know what that was. But at that point, it was like this really pivotal moment when I was like, do you know what? Like, I do not need external things within my life to make myself feel wholly fulfilled and to love myself and who I am and be comfortable with my own body. And that point, I spent a lot of time, spending a lot of time going on holidays on my own and going out walking for hours on my own and just like learning about myself and who I was and what I wanted to be and what I wanted to achieve, but not for external reasons, not for material, not for superficial things, for me and what made me click. And since then, I've kind of gone on this from 25 to like 28. I've gone on this soul search of just self-love and self-development. And I can sit here in front of you today saying like, I genuinely have not been happier than I've ever been in my whole life with who I'm so comfortable in my own skin. I crave my own company, and it's something that I wish that everybody could feel, because it's such an incredible feeling. So the money and everything in business, like, that's a game. I love that. Like, it's awesome. It's a game, it's a challenge. And to be honest, like I always say to people, like, my driver with finances is, I just want to fuck the financial system so far in the ass that I don't even know what money is anymore. I don't want to be limited by that boundary of money. You know, I don't want to have to think about money. Not because I want a private jet or I want a yacht, or like, I don't care for those things. Just because I don't even want to be constricted by that concept, you know? But I think that's meaningless unless I can love myself and be comfortable to just be content in my own self, you know?
And you said that you had this journey from 25 to 28, where you were looking into yourself. What did you find? What did you learn?
So it was at 25 when I made that first million. It's 25, I actually rebranded my initial agency, and I rebranded my the education business, rebranded everything under the new brand Affluent. And at that point, I was like, okay, I wasn't really having much time because I was working so much on both businesses. So I actually bought out one of my students of the education business, who's now my business partner in the agency. And he was managing 90% of the company. But he, as a person, taught me so much about kind of spirituality and soulfulness and so on, and self-love and self-appreciation. And really actually one thing that, I mean, you can probably tell by the house, I love nature. I love plants. There's something about plants and about nature that I just resonate with so much, and that area of life. And what I really learned is that I'm not perfect, and you go through so many stages in your life thinking that you need to act a certain way to be a certain person, to be happy. And I think at that point in my life, I did a lot of comparison to other people, and I'd spend a lot of time looking at other people and thinking, right, I need to be more like this, or I need to think this way, or I need to do that. And I just logged out of every social media platform. I'm not even logged in on social media myself on my phone now. I only go on social media when I really need to for work. I don't even watch YouTube videos. I don't look at influencers. I don't look at anybody that makes me feel like any kind of self-comparison. Because I think that in society, there's so much pressure around being a certain person, acting a certain way. If you want to be an entrepreneur and a man, and if you don't smoke cigars, sleep with a girl every weekend, and live in Dubai, then you're not going to be successful, right? And I think that's really, really unhealthy, especially for young men. Also for the young women, I can only talk from my own experiences. But I got rid of that from my life. I got rid of that comparison, and I just made it about working on myself and improving myself, and on my health, and on my education, and on the people around me that are wholesome and real, and not just around you because you've got something and you've achieved something, you know?
No, 100%. It's interesting you mentioned about social media, and I think this is really good for the young generation that are looking at you right now. And they hear about making 10K, they hear about making a million, but it's also in a very new way. And I mean, it's a new way in the sense that you are the face of your brand. You're sharing content on YouTube. And YouTube has its pros and has its cons, right? How has being the face of your company on YouTube impacted you individually, and how have you managed to navigate what comes with that? Because there's a lot that comes with it. I'm sure you have people that are commenting positive things, but also negative things. I'm sure you have people giving their perspective on you without knowing you. So how would you say you've managed to navigate that? Because I'm sure that is in alignment with the success that comes with it, right?
I'm very grateful to myself that in the early days, and still to this day, I never decided to mimic somebody else's brand to start what I did. I've always been very true to myself on social media and in my videos. And sure, sometimes I'm a bit PG and I don't always share outward opinions that I may have privately. But I'm very much authentic and humble to like my true character. And so I've been very fortunate with my brand, and I haven't ever really received an awful lot of hate. Sure, you get some people, but actually that's coming from a place of, I think I realized very quickly it's coming from a place of insecurity from that individual, and it's not anything personal about you. They're going to do it to loads of other people, and you just have to block that out. But I think one thing I get an awful lot is that people appreciate that I'm not trying to be this big, flashy, loud character. I'm very true to who I actually am in real life, and I'm very authentic to who I am. At least that's what I would like to think, and that's the feedback I get. So I think just with anyone starting a personal brand, it's very, very, very important that you stay authentically yourself. And not everybody will like that. Not everybody will vibe with you. But your audience, your real audience, and your customers will come out, and they will be people that are similar to you. We just hosted a mastermind 2 weeks ago in London, and it was awesome because the people there, it was like they were me, and it was amazing. And because I'd been so authentic on my brand, I had attracted those people who I actually vibe with in real life. And I think lots of people that you see online mimic these characters of who they think they need to be based on whoever else is successful. And they act a certain way. And then they encounter hate and they encounter trouble and they encounter all these other personal issues that happen from not actually being authentically yourself. And I think that's a very dangerous road to go down, for sure.
That's a good point. I think it's definitely taken a new direction when it comes to people buying into personal brands. With that being said, and you sound like you're a big worker, you have been very big on your work. How have you balanced relationship and love, and how have you navigated that? Because that is a real being public on YouTube as well. How have you navigated that space?
It's hard, man. Relationships and business are hard. When I first started my company and my personal brand, I was with someone for like a year before that, and they'd seen like the Nike. Actually, I think it was like 2 years beforehand, and they'd seen like the tail end of like the getting in debt, the starting the sales company, starting the sales jobs, and so on and so forth. And they'd seen all of that, but then they also saw the whole come up from the business and the personality changes and my personal self-development and so on. And I think it's really hard in a relationship to not hold people to an impossible standard based on what you think or how you think you should live your life. When you're going through a stage of personal development and personal growth and self-finding, but you perceive your other half to not be doing the same thing, that's really difficult because it's not actually your place to impose that. And initially in that relationship, I fully imposed that, and I resented the person she was because of my perception of her not developing on herself, right? But it's not actually my place to do that. And I've matured a lot in my relationship. I now have, I was single for like 2 years, had my fun, and then I met Bex, who I'm with right now, and we met in COVID. She has a social media agency, like does like organic stuff. And we just let each other be each other. Like, we're not trying to change each other. But I think what's really difficult is you have to make sure that in your relationship it supports the business. Because for me, like, business has always been my main thing. And sure, relationships and love and having a family in the future and so on, that's important to me as well. But right now, like, I can't foresee anything else like coming in front of that. And I am obsessed with like the game and progressing and learning more and developing myself and seeing how far we can take everything and building new brands and so on. But the relationship has to sort that, because if not, to aid that, because if not, you are just going to have resentment towards another person. I think that's a very fine art of finding that in relationships and business, which is why so many successful business people, young at least, are single, because it's a hard transition, for sure.
I think your point about trying to impose that personal development on your partner, is definitely something that a lot of entrepreneurs.
For sure. You're like, why aren't you waking up at 5 a.m.? How do you get to lay in at 8 a.m. and I'm waking up at 5? Like, how's that fair? You know, like, yeah.
It's an easy mistake. Yeah. Now, you also on this journey of self-discovery, and I think maybe it doesn't show, but I feel that you have really been on a quest deeper than what most people will think on a surface level. And you've explored other realms, psychedelics. Yeah. I know you experienced ayahuasca.
No, I haven't done. I would love to do ayahuasca, but I haven't. I've experimented a lot with magic mushrooms, and I actually microdosed for a month towards the end of last year, which was really interesting.
How did that become a lot? Because to the contrary, most people will look at psychedelics as drug usage. And,
of course.
Some form of like substance abuse.
Of course.
So how have you put yourself in a position now where you're experimenting per se with psychedelics, and how have you got to that place?
I mean, first of all, just to make it clear, like, it's something that, like, it's obviously not something that I do all the time, and it's something that I see psychedelics as a lesson, and I think basically the way that psilocybin as a drug works, just to get this out first, is it opens our whole lives that we're constricted by the thoughts that we have, the experience that we have, and our neural pathways cement themselves. That's why we have opinions. That's why we are all we're all molded by the experiences that we have in our lives. And the older we get, the more cemented those neural pathways are. Psilocybin as a drug just makes them elastic. We can think in new ways, and we can process things differently. That's all it does. There's never been a recorded death in history from psilocybin. And to me, as my business partner, Joe, like, was once speaking to me about it. And he said, like, he was talking to me, and I watched some documentaries, a documentary called Fantastic Fungi, incredible thing. And it was all based on medicinal use of psilocybin. And I thought to myself, at this point, I was going through this really difficult point in the business where we were growing, but like, we weren't growing at the rate we used to be growing. We were growing at like 150 times a year, 150% a year, every single year. And in like 2021, we had like 20% growth. And I was like, I don't want to keep like, and that's great in some companies, but I was like, I don't want to keep growing at that rate. I need to change something, I need to mix things up. And magic mushrooms for me just seemed like, I've got nothing to lose. This isn't dangerous. This isn't, the perception of drugs in themselves is, it's all bollocks, right? We are talking about an actual plant that grew from the earth, that I'm not drying, that I'm not burning, that I'm not mixing with some chemical. I'm literally picking a plant and I'm eating it. It's completely natural. The only reason that we have the perception that this is a class A, this is dangerous, this is drug abuse, is because the government told us so. And frankly, that's ridiculous. It's completely absurd that people have that opinion. And I understand it, but it just doesn't make sense to me. I'm very open-minded as a person, and I don't think that we should take everything as face value that we're told to. I think that human beings naturally should be inquisitive, and we should ask why, and we should look into things ourselves. And when you actually educate yourself on certain topics, when you actually educate yourself into certain substances, for example, you realize that actually these things are an aid, and in some situations, these things can really change your life. I had them in small, daily consumable like tablets, like pills, and I microdosed for an entire month. And you don't feel anything, you don't get high, you're not like, whoa, look at all these things. It's not like that, it's completely subconscious. But your brain is just allowed to think in a different way, and you're allowed to figure out new paths that you didn't know existed beforehand because your experiences and the way your chemical makeup is. And I had more breakthroughs in that month than I had had an entire year. It was absolutely incredible. And we launched a brand new product. We had a 100 grand day for the first time ever, a month later. Now, I'm not putting it down to magic mushrooms. It could have been a complete placebo, but something happened, right? Something happened. And I didn't die. And I'm cool. And I'm not abusing anything. And I think exploration is just it's a magical thing.
I think there's a lot of spirituality to a lot of the psychedelics that people are now starting to become more aware of, especially in America. So I think it's very unique to have someone from the UK expressing their experience. And are you looking to experience anything like ayahuasca? Or?
I would love to have an ayahuasca experience, man. I think that would be fascinating. Like I'm very into brain exploration, and I think that I wish everybody could experience what their brain is capable of experiencing. Like the human brain is capable of experiencing things that everyday people couldn't even fathom that their brain can experience. So you can look at things that you've seen every single day in a completely different way, a completely new perspective. And so of course, I would love to explore that. And of course, I never want to fall into a trap of abusing anything, and I'm too strong-minded for that, and I never could. Even when I was going out and running these nightclub events, I wasn't drinking 4 nights a week, right? I've always been very much in control of everything. But yeah, sure, flying over to some tribe somewhere in the Amazon and drinking some tea and having some spiritual experience with somebody that's used to that and does that like on a regular basis and being guided through that sounds fucking awesome to me, man. I'd love to do that.
What do you think what misconception do you think people have of Jordan?
Oh, that's a tough question. A misconception. I think that a misconception that people have of me is that, and I think it's a misconception that people have of a lot of people that are quote unquote successful, whatever that means to you, is that I have ego and that I could be perceived as arrogant. I've had that a lot from people that I've never met. And that is self-confidence and self-understanding misconceived as arrogance and ego. And actually, I think it comes from a place of self-insecurity from that other person. But I think that's something that I've had a lot from other people until they've met me and realized, you're a sound guy, you're a nice guy, you're humble, you're good to speak to, you're not who I expected you to be. And I think that comes a lot from YouTube. I think people watch the stuff and then they'll see like a house tour and a car reveal. But people love that in the brand. They're like, oh, I want to see the car, want to see the house. That looks like boasting, right? I'm not a boaster, I'm not a flexer. Like, that's not me, that's not my character. But it's the brand and it's a business. And I think lots of people like do not actually put two and two together, that a personal brand is actually a business. It's the perception of your business. You have to introduce some kind of lifestyle to create desire for a product, right? And so I think that can be misconstrued. I think people can misunderstand that sometimes, for sure. I don't have ego. I'm not arrogant. I just understand myself and I know who I am, and I'm just confident, you know.
Looking back at the 13-year-old Jordan, who was figuring it out, and you can even go as far as 16-year-old Jordan who was still figuring it out. What would you tell your 16-year-old self actually?
My 16-year-old self.
That you know now.
Stop trying to impress other people and stop trying to invent the next big thing. I always stopped myself from starting a business because I thought, invent the next Uber, invent the next Airbnb. That's how people are successful. I didn't really fathom the fact that people out there are starting businesses every single day. Restaurants start up in every city all the time, like almost like monthly, right? And it's the same business model that's been around for centuries. And those businesses start, they have a new twang on something and it works really well. I thought, like, if you're going to go into business, you have to start the next big thing. But that was just a limiting belief that I have, and that stopped me from getting started so much sooner. And hence why there's people still starting agencies, for example, which is loads of people will cry saturated, starting agencies and being wildly successful, like, so quick. So yeah, stop impressing other people. Stop trying to invent the next big thing.
And a really important question I have to ask you, Jordan, is, does money make you happy?
No. Money doesn't make you happy, but money is a vehicle. It makes it easier. Money makes it a lot easier. I went fishing yesterday for the first time in like 3 years with a friend that I haven't seen in like 3 years. And just the last time I went fishing. And he's just one of these people who's just like, he doesn't want for a lot. He doesn't have money. He doesn't need money. He doesn't desire for it. He told me he hadn't seen anyone for 6 months, like before he saw me. And I was like, this is crazy, right? But that in itself is just the epitome of like the concept that money doesn't buy happiness. It's what true happiness is to me is just contentment in areas of your life and to not need or desire external things. I went to Monaco this year. I took my mum to Monaco, and we go on a holiday like once a year, and I just treat it. And it's just such an amazing thing to be able to do. And we went to Monaco. I hated the fucking place because it was just, to me, it was just greed and gluttony, and it just epitomized like old money and this chasing of something external that just fundamentally doesn't exist. This life and soul searching of things and items and impressing people. And for me, I mentioned this to you earlier, but I think that a lot of people say, and one of my things in my life is I actually think life is happier being a shark in a fish tank. And a lot of people use that term shark in a fish tank as a negative thing to describe someone. For example, like I live in the countryside. There are not many young, successful people around here. Sure, there are some people, but that I don't really know. I maybe know like a very small handful of young people who have started their own companies that haven't inherited it from family. And I think there's actually merit in not desiring to surround yourself with billionaires and millionaires and all these people that are so far ahead of you. Because I think you end up chasing something that doesn't exist. And I think that everything that anybody needs to be happy is right in front of them at any one time. And if you attach yourself to money as your core of happiness, you are never going to be happy. You are always going to be unfilled. And I think the danger when you are always surrounding yourself with more successful people, more financially, people who have more stuff than you, is that you're going to be chasing the wrong things in life. You're not going to be chasing fulfillment and love and care and genuine relationships. That's why I'm so grateful that I spent a lot and when I was young, because I realized that like this shit, like it's great. I got a brand new M4 at like 24 and I drove it and the adrenaline was incredible. 2 weeks later, I'm used to it. Like it's normal. It's like, what next? So I bought a Porsche and then I did it again. And it's just, you just end up falling into this chase of non-existent, like just substanceless. Like there's nothing to it. But the things that really make you happy are right in front of you every single day. And money just makes that easier. Because if I want to see my friends and I want to say, let's go on holiday this weekend, we can go. If I want to go out to a nice restaurant, we can go. There's not many things that I want to do that I couldn't do. And I think that just makes that process nicer. But I'd still be happy if I didn't have anything. If I lost it all tomorrow, I'd still be happy. The money doesn't affect that.
So the last question. Who is Jordan Platten?
Who is Jordan Platten? How do you answer that question? Who is Jordan Platten? Jordan Platten is a guy that is just like you, just like everyone else, is just finding himself and working his way through life and having fun. Jordan Platten is someone that doesn't want for a lot, doesn't need a lot, could have it if he wanted it, but has understood that everything he has and everything he needs is right in front of them. And everything I will do now in my life and in my business and in searching for success and whatever is going to be, number one, based on impact and how much impact I can have on people, on the environment, on animals. And number two, based on self-development and a love of the game. I mentioned that earlier, but that's my thing. Like, I have an obsession with progression within myself. And it's not for anyone else. It's not for external. It's just to see how far I can take things myself, how far I can push myself, how far I can grow. Yeah, that's me.
Jordan, thank you very much for sitting down with us. I think your story is inspiring. I feel like spiritually, there's also a lot more that you're going to be teaching as time goes on, because I can just feel that you've also done a lot of self-work.
Yeah.
But I want to thank you for sitting with us today.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is going to inspire a lot of people.
Amazing, man. Thank you so much, man. Thank you, man.